Hey, Bold Like a Leopard family, this is one of 3 parts to a 2.5 hour interview that I had with Joniversity earlier in February. So please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com, as well as subscribe star if you want to donate. All those are at Chef Leopard, and you can find me on Gab at Starscream85. And I'll talk to you later.
And today we have, and this is now we're going to switch to English, so I hope everybody's okay with it. First of all, we have Arad the Great with us. Hello, Arad. What's up?
Hi.
Sorry.
Inani. Okay.
Yeah. You're squeezed there in between us. You're the buffer guy. But more importantly, we have, introduce yourself, Mr. Chef.
I'm Chef Leopard, here from the Midwest in the United States. I have a channel called Bold Like a Leopard. It's also on YouTube. Azkanamer, so Bold Like a Leopard. That's where it comes from. And I'm here to discuss some of the research I did.
Okay, that's good. So now this is mandatory whenever we bring someone new in the show. They have to tell us where they sit, more or less, on the Nolan chart. So more like an Ayn Rand type politics, maybe Chomsky, sort of anarcho-socialist, whatever. Maybe you're into the Stalin stuff. I don't know. I mean, people are into weird shit. Or you might be one of those dudes who likes throwing liberals off helicopters. So, where are you situated in this lovely it's a Nolan chart. Apparently that's
on the
technical
XY spectrum, on the XY axis. So I definitely put it up in the upper right. Not quite. I'm not an objectivist like Ayn Rand or not even Murray Rothbard, but it's interesting you mention it because I became a libertarian. I was living in Israel. I'd been in the army, just like some of you were, and probably a lot of you in the audience. And during the 2008 election, Ron Paul was running, and there was one specific interaction he had with Rudy Giuliani, where he basically said that, we have enemies, but some of our enemies we've created ourselves. And it was an iconic one. I'm not quite as big of a Ron Paul fan as I used to be, but he definitely was the start of me moving towards the right economically and on foreign policy.
Okay. How long did you live in Israel?
5 years.
So do you speak Hebrew?
Yeah, I do, but it would probably come out like pretty retarded at this point. So
okay.
That's fine. It happens to me too, and I've been living in Israel for all my life. Okay, so we're going to speak today about something which might actually be obscure to quite a few people out there. We're talking about an incident which is basically widely referred to as the 5 dancing Israelis, going back almost 20 years now to the 9/11 terror attacks. I remember it. It's one of those things that, like when you've watched it, no matter where you were. I was actually in Australia at the time. It was insane. But I wasn't aware of this whole thing, this whole story. I guess, I don't know, there was a point where I started going into those conspiracies and shit, and but I wasn't aware. So we're just going to give a little bit of sort of background for people who might not be aware of what is going on here.
But particularly in the Middle East, millions of people believe Israeli agents were involved in the attack. And they claim there is a basis for their suspicions. Moments after the planes hit the World Trade Center, eyewitnesses reported seeing a group of young men apparently celebrating.
I grab my binoculars and I'm trying, to look at the Twin Towers. But what caught my attention, down there, I see this van parked. And I see 3 guys on top of the van. They seemed to be taking a movie. And I could see that they were like happy. They're laughing. They didn't look shocked to me.
This part of New Jersey has a large Muslim community. It would turn out that 3 of the 9/11 hijackers had lived there. A major terrorist manhunt began, and just 6 hours after the attack, the van was stopped at a roadblock by patrolman Scott DiCarlo.
We were asked to detain the van and the passengers. They were just removed from the vehicle, patted down for safety precaution, and detained.
911 call at 410 Park.
I think once the FBI arrived, one of them stated that they were on our side. There's something to that effect. The mood was confusion. As people were driving by, they were screaming all sorts of excerpts. Profanity, things to that effect. Nothing that I'd care to repeat.
3-1 day, they're in service.
Over 2 months of interrogation began. The FBI discovered the men weren't from Al-Qaeda. They were Israelis. An enduring conspiracy theory began, that they were Israeli field agents who'd uncovered the 9/11 plot in advance. Israel had deliberately failed to warn the US authorities because it wanted to ensure that American public opinion was hostile to the Arab world. Channel 4 traveled to Israel and spoke to 3 of the 5 men arrested that day to hear their side of the story.
One of the neighbors gave a call to the feds and tell there is a white van with 5 Arab people. As you see, I'm blonde, blue eyes. And he told there is a bomb in a white van. He gave the number, 5 Arab people, and they're on the way to Manhattan to make a suicide.
I was the driver. The policeman took his gun and put it in my head.
Where are the bombs? Where did you want to do the suicide? And I don't know nothing about what to say.
But I told them that I'm just a tourist from Israel, I'm Jewish. And he told me, don't talk, if you talk I'm going to shoot you. People were spitting on us from the street. They are passing with the cars and spit on us. Because they thought that we are the Arabs. They were looking for someone to blame.
A passerby took these photos of the police searching the van. 5 men were inside it. Some had dual nationalities and were carrying more than 1 passport. Others had flight tickets to leave the US within days. Fearing robbery, one had over $4,000 hidden in a sock.
They were ripping things, they took the camera, they were screaming at us all that time. Put your head into the ground or we were gonna shoot you.
They told interrogators they were working for Urban Moving, a shipping and storage firm run by an Israeli businessman who often employed Israeli students without work permits. The men say there was an innocent explanation for what was found in the van and their behavior on 9/11. They were, they say, simply on a working holiday.
We heard in the news that one of the plane was crashing down the building, and we thought it was an accident at the beginning. So we went up to the roof of Urban Moving, and we saw the building burning.
There is a better view from a building in Jersey that is up a hill, straight line to the World Trade Center. We decided to go up there. It's like 2-3 minutes from the office. Stand over there and take some pictures. Everyone wants pictures like this in his camera.
Their boss at Urban Moving, Dominic Suter, was questioned by the FBI, but then disappeared back to Israel. It left lots of unanswered questions and fueled suspicion about the 5 men. Investigators seized the firm's computers, and the investigation took on a new urgency with multiple lie detector tests.
They continued to ask, did you know the terrorists? Did you know where they flew from? Did you know what they were supposed to do? And the answer all the time is no, I don't know even what you talk about.
The FBI wasn't satisfied. Channel 4 has learned from intelligence sources that some of the men's names were already known to American counterintelligence. Paul Kurtzberg admitted serving in an Israeli army anti-terrorist unit. He refused to take a lie detector test for 10 weeks.
I was serving in a special unit in the army, and it's not a big secret or something like that. But there are things that I have to keep to myself as loyal to my country.
The story that the feds build is a very good story. When you hear their story, you start even to believe it inside. Okay, maybe I'm a spy. I'm sure that I'm not, but the story is so good, so maybe I am.
Yuval Aviv is a counterterrorism advisor to the U.S. Congress, but was once a spy for Israel's secret service Mossad. He says Urban Moving was a front company for Israeli intelligence, and that some of its workers were spying illegally in the U.S.
Israel has engaged in intelligence gathering in friendly countries. Some of it is done with permission, and some of it probably has been done without permission in areas that is vital to Israeli interest, where large Arab communities operate and live, where there's a lot of fundraising for terrorist activities in the Middle East. That's the old undercover. This is the old way of gathering intelligence, which America has not used. If a decision is being made to put a bomb under a building during and after prayer on a Friday night in a mosque, you have to be in the mosque. You will not be able to do it from a satellite.
Sources close to Israeli intelligence have told Channel 4 that Urban Moving produced no information that could have prevented 9/11. But whatever the truth of the conspiracy story, it's flushed out the possibility that Israel spies on America, its closest ally, an espionage tactic that both governments would prefer kept secret.
There are certain type of information that and methods of collections that you don't want to share with the local host country. Systems that you use, contacts that you make, undercover operations that you penetrating other terrorist networks. Those types of information you don't share with anybody.
The Urban Moving 5 were eventually deported to Israel for visa violations. Channel 4 understands, from sources close to U.S. intelligence, that the condition of their release was that Israel promised not to spy in the U.S. without permission. Then, as now, the Israeli government publicly denies it spies in the U.S.
So I guess now the first question that I'm gonna drop, Chef, is, because we just gave you really like, you just introduced yourself within less than 1 minute, so now you can introduce yourself as it relates to this case. So what is it that you do, and how the hell did you get to focus so much on this specific topic? And what it is that you're doing. Why do we need your help in this? Who is using it for what, why? And just shoot,
Okay, so obviously, we didn't really go through my connection to the issue. Obviously, I grew up here. I was here in the U.S. For those of you that don't know, 10th grade was when 9/11 happened. We all experienced it. It was probably the first terror event that most Americans heard about. There were obviously previous ones that had happened. And for people of my generation, it was the central event of our lives, because it was like everything. The world had changed. The Clinton years had mostly been about blowjobs and things like that. Nothing had really been of major global proportions that we had to pay attention to. So fast forward to today. I have done some journalism. I'm not really I would say I'm definitely not a full-time journalist. I'm an engineer by trade. But I've done some investigative journalism, mainly concerning people like Rachel Maddow and some of her journalistic hoaxes. I've done some investigation of climate groups that are essentially, they're basically front groups for all sorts of other left-wing, far left-wing causes, so you could probably find those. And this whole issue of the dancing Israelis, the 9/11, was something that I'd always believed never had even any trace of truth to it until someone who at the time I knew online shared an article from Un's Review. If you don't know what Un's Review is, maybe Johnny knows it because they publish a lot of race theory stuff that is, a lot of it is apparently pseudoscience, like that the Uyghurs are white. So they had a person publish an article named Phil Giraldi, who is a former CIA agent, and he was using the revelation of some photos of the 5 dancing Israelis as an opening in order to try to revive the theory that had been, that it comes back every year. People try to say that it is dead, but it's, you know, you can't kill ideas. That's something that I think, I don't know. You want to?
I encountered this. Yeah, I encountered this story some time ago, and just looked a little bit into it. And there was one thing really that was incriminating. They said that there was one that was taken a day before, which one of the Israelis was standing with the World Trade Center in the background, and he was holding a lighter, as if he was about to light it up on fire. So are you aware of this story?
So yeah, this is something that is very, very often cited by believers in the theory. But as if you look at the first article that I wrote concerning, so you know, let me get to that. It'll be pretty quick. So much of what Phil Giraldi was basing his research on was what a different person named Whitney Webb talked about in her article from the same summer concerning it, and she also made the mistake of claiming that the lighter was flicked. If you look at this image, this is from all of the photos were taken on the same day, on September 11th, and the FBI even says so in their file, or they don't even have to say it. So they had a camera that was recovered from the vehicle, and the camera was 14 hours too slow on the timestamp. So
that's why it said September 10 on the camera.
Exactly. So they were now the thing is, so what Whitney Webb and a lot of the other people who look into this, they miss is the fact that, and she missed it in her article, is that the location of this photo, where my cursor is, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor.
Yeah, they can.
So this photo specifically isn't taken from the Dork Apartments, which is where the witness in the video, the BBC video, says that she saw them. This is from the top of their warehouse in Weehawken, New Jersey. And it's only a few blocks from there, but at some point during the day, they claim it was before, other people claim it was after they went to the Dork Apartments where they were seen. They climbed up onto that roof and tried to take a view of the World Trade Center. As you can see from the view, it's not exactly, so the top view in color is something that has been taken by various different media organizations. This might actually be from the BBC report, by the way. I think I saw it. It looked pretty familiar. So this overview is much, much more generous in the view. You could probably have seen at least part of the World Trade Center from there. But these guys were taking it from the top of the warehouse. You can see that there was a road right over here. This is an overpass that you would see cars just driving past all the time. Why would that be a good vantage point to take video of the World Trade Center? The direct line of sight from that area is towards Midtown Manhattan. It's not towards Southern Manhattan where the World Trade Center was. So the image that they often share, you can actually see, these are the 2 red stars at the top. You can actually see the tops of the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building. Actually, yeah, the Empire State Building would be the right star, and the Chrysler Building would be the left star. So yeah, you could possibly see part of the World Trade Center from there. It wouldn't be a great place to take video of the event, which is what most of them show the video of the Lapid show. Yair Lapid, who I guess
Yeah.
He's gone places since then, but um, anyway, so that video is
Arguable.
often. Sorry.
Arguable, but yeah.
Right, but he that video, I've wanted to ask a lot of people, and maybe people in your audience would be able to help me, because I can't find a version of that video that isn't dubbed.
People are already blaming the Mossad for stopping the live stream.
Yeah, I think we're back up.
Yeah, we're back. Okay, sorry for that.
As I was saying, the stuff that they're using from Israeli interviews is all bullshit. Are you aware of that?
Look, I think that if we watch the full interview, I'm not sure what they would have been saying, but I think that the issue that I've been trying to work on is the weakness of the case that's been documented by both the FBI, and that's why the FBI didn't prosecute. So, look, I know that a lot of people think that the dubbed video is incriminating, which I don't find it to be, but it's the same sort of thing. When they say we were there to document the event, that could be in Hebrew. It could be Hayinu sham לתעד את האירוע. It could be היינו שם בשביל לתעד את מה שקרה. It could be totally different things, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
I'm talking. There are other things that they said in other interviews in the Israeli media, which are similarly taken out of context in this way and mistranslated in this way. I can't remember it now, but I remember seeing a few things which, when I looked into it, I looked into the Israeli to the actual Hebrew interviews, and I saw that it's just bullshit.
Well, I think later we could. After the stream, I could get in touch with you. We could probably go through that. But
okay.
I think that the issue that I've been finding is, so there's basic mistakes in the case. So this is Whitney Webb, who, by the way, blocked me on Twitter, and I'm now banned on Twitter for calling a different person we'll talk about a retard, and he was subsequently banned. Word.
No.
It's all like some sort of chain of karma for all of us involved in this. In any case, they like to use evidence like this. So the evidence that they have, for example, I don't know if I have that photo here, but there is a photo of one of the men flicking a lighter next to what would be where the World Trade Center is. But that's not incriminating evidence. And the fact that she believed that happened the day before 9/11, when the FBI file itself said that there was the discrepancy on the camera, it shows that. And this is why I called it. I said, did they actually read the FBI file? And when you read the FBI file, you start to realize that, look, let's say that they were agents of the Mossad. This would probably be the most incompetent team of heard. Because you have.
Then again, that's not to say that the Mossad didn't have some incapable fucking spies in the past, right? It's not going to be a first. Although usually the incapable ones are not actual Mossad spies. They're usually just assets and agents, so people that are recruited by and are not specifically Mossad fighters or Mossad operatives. But what is okay, let's go one second into the conspiracy. What is it exactly that they're accused of?
Let me start at basically the facts that are known. At about 4 p.m. on 9/11, there were 5 Israelis that were, this was talked about in the BBC footage, but 5 Israelis were arrested in East Rutherford near Giant Stadium in a van. And their names are Sivan and Paul Kurtzberg. This is public knowledge, so I'm not, this isn't something new. Sivan and Paul Kurtzberg, brothers, Oded Elner, Omer Marmari, and Yaron Shemuel. And those 5 were held for about 2 weeks by the FBI and later transferred to the INS, which is now ICE, and deported. Now, during the course of their their detainment, they were, I mean, obviously they're not people who were above board. They were working illegal in the United States. So yeah, the five guys were arrested, and yes, they had immigration issues. Those are things. So whenever you bring up that, yes, they were guilty of immigration violations, like working with a travel visa, or that apparently they were probably violating a number of drug laws because they had drug paraphernalia. They had pictures of them. They were, one of them was obviously buying drugs at the time. So all those things, when you put them into the context of what a professional group of people, operators, whatever you want to call them, spies, it's not professional at all. And those are things that they don't want to address. And they prefer to make it seem like these people were basically there, and they were so brazen, and the U.S. had such little of a handle on Israeli spying in the U.S. that they didn't care. They were willing to dance on the roof of a parking garage in New Jersey, and that they knew that they would get out of jail because there was no accountability mechanism. But the fact is, if you go through the FBI file, you see that many of the things that are mentioned, even on the BBC video, which is not necessarily calling them every name in the book, like other people we could talk about, the idea that some of them had airline tickets to leave immediately afterward. The fact is, one person in the file, and this is all I know from the file, so if they're accusing them of having that, then they have to accuse the FBI of hiding something, because there was one person with tickets to leave, I believe, the weekend after, and then there was another person with a travel itinerary for March of 2002. So no, I don't think that if these people had gone to trial based on any evidence or so-called evidence in the file, it would have been an open and shut dismissal. It would have probably not even been, the judge would probably have dismissed it with prejudice, and the government would have wasted the amount of money that they do on these trials on nothing.
Okay. It should be noted. It should be noted that they were celebrating after the first plane hit, right? So at this point, nobody thought it was a terrorist attack. So this wasn't like, yay, America got hit. This was, yay, what an awesome selfie. If they were celebrating. And this is we look at it today. It seems terrible that they were dancing while 3,000 people were getting killed by terrorists. But this was not the case. I mean, the celebrating happens after the first hit. Nobody knew it was terrorism yet.
Okay, so let me interject there. I'll play devil's advocate. So the premise of what you're saying really depends on what you believe they were doing that morning. Now, obviously, if you read through the FBI file, which I read through, and it's pretty long, you don't have to read through the whole thing, because a lot of it is insurance forms and paperwork and things that don't really have to do with them. They have to do with various issues of urban moving systems as a business that don't have anything to do with 9/11. But if you read through what was going on, it's not possible to prove that these people had advanced knowledge. Okay, there's even one witness that alludes to the fact that they may have visited his gas station on the way to work, and that would have probably put them behind on their quest to get to the Newark apartment buildings and start filming 9/11 like the people allege that they were. So, and then later there's video footage that the FBI wanted to see whether they were at that gas station that morning. So if you believe in this notion that they were there, either as a surveillance team or if they were in on the actual attack, then they don't even accept the premise that this was them reacting only to the first plane. This is them reacting to something they knew would happen, and that they were anticipating, and that was part of their quote-unquote mission. Now, look, I'm willing to say, if people want to believe that, if people want to think that it was Israel that knew about the attacks happening, some people want to believe that they did it. That's perfectly fine for them to believe it. But there's no proof of it in the FBI file. There's no proof of it in any of the footage that is available. A lot of them, the witnesses, for example. So some of the witnesses claim that they were. Can you guys still hear me? Because one of you went.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Again, go on.
try
Worst
to go back
case
to-
scenario.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. It's
Yeah.
going to go up anyway, and
Okay.
and it's all recorded. So
So they're basing it on witnesses that said that they were taking video footage with a LCD screen camcorder. No such camera was ever recovered. How do people explain it? People like Ryan Dawson, who I've done the most amount of research on, they claim that they gave that camera to Dominic Suter, who was their handler, supposedly from the Mossad, and that it was spirited out of the country. Fantastic. If that's the way you want that theory to work, that's great. But you don't have evidence. The only evidence you have that camera even existed, that they had an LCD screen camcorder and that they were panning the horizon on 9/11, as if that would help. Like using a camera that you would probably use in order to to take footage of deer in the prairie. That's not professional camera equipment. A camcorder that you would hold in your hand, it would be shaky and everything, but you don't have it. There's no evidence that ever existed apart from witnesses. And witness testimony is different from material testimony, such as a recovered device.
Right.
So again, what is it exactly they're accused of? That's I still didn't get an answer to that, and I'm trying to go back to that.
There's different streams of thought. The one stream of thought that it's supported by a lot of these people who are more cautious because they don't want to accuse Israel of actually orchestrating 9/11, is that they had foreknowledge of the attack and that they were perched there as early as 8 a.m. on 9/11 at the Doric apartments, and they were ready for the first plane to hit. And the supporting evidence for that was that a van was seen, a white van that was seen on the premises at 8 o'clock, around 8 o'clock or 8:15. They want to say that was their van. But the fact is that the action, and this is something that came out in a debate I had with Ryan Dawson, which I think you saw, Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they saw the van. The van said electrical supplies. That was not an Urban Moving Systems van, right? But these people who believe in the theory that they knew all along that this was going to happen, they believe that was their van. And in a video, Ryan actually says that if the van's there, they're there. But there's more than one white van in New York City and New Jersey, which is where they were. And the person didn't see any of the people in the van, right? So if they're waiting in the van, then you don't know if they're there ready to take footage. The Doric apartment buildings, if you look at the view from them, it's I mean, if you're in the inside of the building, that would be a fantastic view of New Jersey, and you would have absolutely no risk of being seen. So the whole thing relies on a couple basic assumptions. Okay, first, that those two witnesses that saw them at 8 o'clock and 8:15, that they actually saw the van that belongs to the five movers. Okay, that they saw the van that belongs to them, because they didn't see the guys. And then for a whole half hour, they're not seen at all. In fact, I think it's only until 8:50 that any of those people are seen at the apartment building, right? So then their excuse is typically that this was a back entrance, it was the top of a parking garage, it wasn't normally a high traffic area. That's fine, but that doesn't mean that you can establish that they were there before the first plane hit, which was at 8:46 a.m. So their whole case rests on this assumption that the guys were waiting there in the morning. They say that they were casing the apartment building the previous week. If you're not familiar with American slang or colloquialism, casing an apartment building, that's what burglars do when they research a new place to burglarize. So they claim that their presence there the previous week, when many of the witnesses who were talked to by the FBI, they said that they had seen them the previous week. So people like Dawson and Giraldi and Whitney Webb, who are the ones I'm most familiar with, they would claim that this was them doing research on a place to shoot the video. Well, if they were so good at their research as intelligence agents would be, why would they shoot it on the parking garage? They could probably, and the Mossad, which they always allege, this is another thread, they allege that Eitan Wertheimer, this mega billionaire, was involved in this. Why wouldn't he have just rented an apartment building inside the actual Doric apartments, and they would have been able to perch their camera equipment there, professional equipment, shoot all the footage that they want, have a whole party there with popcorn and martinis and strippers or whatever, and do whatever the hell they wanted. That is now they'll say, well, they don't have an answer for that. They just want to have the facts stand as they are and believe every single assumption, when the fact is that the van itself had an electrical supplies signage on it. So they want to say, this is what Ryan said during our actual debate. He wants to say, well, that was another van that was owned by the group of moving companies that he claims are all Israeli spies. So he doesn't know the license plate of the van. He doesn't know who owns the van, but he's willing to assume that it's owned by the same group of people.
Yeah, I watched that debate, and I think you really hammered him on this point. On this point, he didn't have an answer. He kept saying, "Well, it's not. I'm not basing it on that." Okay, so what are you basing it on? And he didn't really have an answer. It should be said, Ryan Dawson in the debate with you was trying to make it like, oh, he's just looking out for the truth. It's not. He knows. He thinks that the Mossad and he's not blaming only the Israelis. He's saying maybe the Mossad and the CIA and all. He's just checking out because they are all suspicious. But check out his resume. It's all about anti-Israel, just propaganda and basically anti-Semitism. Ryan Dawson has been spreading anti-Semitism for years now.
So I mean, I'll go into, I don't have a long history in this arena like Ryan Dawson does. He's been researching it for a very long time, if you can call it research. But it's sometimes, painful as a libertarian to watch him try to represent our spectrum of the movement, because there's a lot of Whitney Webb also comes from, she works for the Ron Paul Institute, and Philip Giraldi is advisor for Ron Paul, or has been in the past. So for someone who drew a lot of inspiration in terms of my policy views from Ron Paul, it's pretty surprising that he trusts people like that, all of whom communicate with each other. I know that Giraldi and Dawson are in contact, but the fact is that Dawson, I don't think he's as stupid as in many cases his mistakes show him to be. Okay, now that's kind of a weird statement to make, right? His mistakes are stupid, but I don't think he's a stupid individual. I've heard him discuss things on Catholicism with other people. I think he's an intelligent person. I think he's also a deeply dishonest, and he has definitely an agenda. And people were saying to me after the debate that I was being mean and vicious to him. And the point is, I've said this to people on things that have nothing to do with politics. I don't care about being a nice person. I don't care about making nice to people, being civil when I'm dealing with people that I can't stand. And during the interview, or what he called an interview, he later claimed it was an interview when it was actually supposed to be a debate. That's what Halsey English proposed when he sent the message to Ryan. I made no attempt to, get like buddy with him, because I didn't want to reveal any of the topics I was going to bring up ahead of time. So, Ryan Dawson, I've listened to other interviews of his. I wouldn't say that he's a person who is completely devoid of any logic, because I'm also a climate skeptic. I think, John, you're a climate believer, would you say?
What believe in what? That the climate
do you believe
is changing?
No, do you believe in the whole carbon tax trading scheme that's going on?
No.
Okay. So in any case, so there
the
are
climate is changing. There's no
right. Yeah.
doubt about
Nobody.
it.
I don't dispute that.
It's
I don't dispute that. But
anthropocentric. That is also, there's not a lot of doubt about that. The solution of trying to basically uh, fight capitalism in one way or another. It can be either make it into a crony system where just add yet another nice way to make money, or whatever way. Essentially, if you're sucking money out of the system, that's not a solution. But that's a
right.
story.
So I was just bringing it up by way of example. It's not as if I don't have areas where I probably line up with Ryan Dawson in terms of other topics, but in terms of this, in terms of things that he talks about with Iran, in terms of topics where he talks about with Russian foreign policy, like the Skripal poisoning, if you remember that, that happened a couple years ago in England. He takes a completely different attitude. Yeah. He says if it's a Russian person who's accused, or a Russian operative, or an Iranian operative, he doesn't believe that they're guilty at all, and he tries to make these fantastic leaps of logic in order to prove their innocence. Now, that's fine. I also believe in the presumption of innocence. I believe in American the American system of justice, which is significantly different from the way it is in France and other countries. So that's fine, but he flips that attitude on its head when it comes to these 5 people, often with other Israeli people that he accuses of all sundry crimes. And that's why I dove into it head on, and that's why you could probably see that because he betrays the very substance of the libertarian approach to criminal justice when he says that the things that they are documented as doing, he says that they're proof of some sort of complicity in 9/11, or that they were aware of what was going on. He is basically flipping his attitude, because there's no doubt about it, he sympathizes with any sort of group that has a criticism of Israel. And once he finds a single person, and it used to be only Israelis, now he's broadened it to other Jews. He exploits it in order to fuel the rage porn that his followers like. So I don't think he's an idiot, but I do think that he is exploiting a lot of morons.
An anti-Semite.
No. Yeah, it's really. I mean, if anyone's seen the series of videos that I made about him, I think there's really little doubt that the guy has real issue with Jews. Do you think that there's anything to it? Anything at all? Is there? So here's my bet. My bet is that, and we do know, by the way, that well, obviously we know that Israel spies on the US spies on Israel, everybody spies on everybody. Anyone who thinks it's any other way is a naive idiot and probably a retard, and should just
or they're
take
dishonest.
A break. No, a retard.
There are people who lie to themselves.
Yeah, but you usually it starts from a point of being a retard. But okay, I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
There is a strong possibility that there was some kind of foreknowledge on the side of both Israel and the United States. Okay, I'm not talking now about the 5 Israelis. What I am talking about is, let's say, if we were to sort of explore the more plausible sides of a conspiracy. So it's not bringing down the actual buildings, but for instance, a more plausible conspiracy would be a cover-up as to, okay, we knew and we either didn't act on the intelligence, or if it's in Israel case, Israel maybe didn't share the intelligence, or they shared it, but they shared it with someone who didn't do anything with the information. And we know that there was issue with data flows within the U.S. government. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of what they themselves
that's
found
not,
out.
yeah.
So,
So what's the question?
do you think, if we're going to explore the more plausible sides of the conspiracy theory of any type of Israeli involvement in this whole thing, what do you think there's anything to it? If there is, what is the most plausible? And if not, then why not? What would be the case that you would make to say there is no fucking way Israel is connected to this in whatever way because ABC, or there is? That's basically the question. It's more a general question with regards to 9/11.
All right. So with regards to 9/11, there are a lot of open questions, and I went into some of them in my first response to the Ryan Dawson debate concerning first the commission that was set up, which was entirely political of elected officials, and it did a very superficial job of going through a number of the really bizarre lapses of judgment that would obviously create, the ground to believe, yes, people knew that what was going to happen would happen, and they allowed it to happen. And there have been a lot of different schools of thought about that, whether it was the Bush administration that let it go through because they wanted to go to the war in Iraq. Now, I do believe that Bush used 9/11 after the fact in order to invade Iraq, and for that, he's absolutely condemnable. You don't need to prove that he knew 9/11 would happen in order to substantiate the fact that he used it in order to justify going to Iraq and completing what many thought his dad should have done in the 90s and overthrow Saddam, which we now know was a strategic blunder that probably has wrecked American foreign policy since then. But when you're talking about whether Israel had foreknowledge of the attack, there was a story, I believe, in it was a German newspaper. It might have been Bild, but they did have it in 2002, where Israel had shared the identities of a number of the people who were eventually the hijackers, and they sent it to the FBI prior to 9/11, and nothing ended up happening. Now, some people who believe in the grand theory that we're talking about, the dancing Israelis, they claim that this was bullshit. They claim that this was after the fact. Israel is trying to cover its ass, that they were, because of other areas where they were exposed, they're trying to use it as a red herring in order to have people look away from what Israel does in the United States. So the answer is, I don't know. It's possible that Israel knew what happened and they didn't inform American officials. It's possible that they did inform American officials, but they didn't give them the full information that would have helped them to catch all of the eventual hijackers. Now, the issue with what, so there's definitely been discussion around it, and I think that the U.S. government has concealed a lot. I don't know what the Israeli government has concealed because, I have no clue how to get documents within Israeli intelligence made public. It's probably much, much more difficult than here because you don't have the Freedom of Information Act like we do. So that's something that I think that the Israeli government knew who some of the hijackers were. I don't know what they did prior to 9/11 in order to inform the U.S. government, and they claim that they did try to inform them specifically about I think it was the hijackers on United Flight 175 that ended up crashing into the Pentagon. I believe it was that one, but I'd have to go back and look.
Mm. I'll say this: all of my suspicions, all of my doubts, have been answered by you. Basically, I mean, everything that has been, when I looked into the story, there were, like I said, a few things that looked strange and incriminating, but you've answered all of them. Now I see absolutely nothing in this story.
Yeah, go ahead. You guys?
No, once you tell me that the camera was, I mean, the big thing was that they took a photo the day before, and we talked about it. Well, if you tell me that it's simply the camera was not, that the time wasn't right on the camera, then that answers the question.
Well, according to the police and the FBI, it is.
Yeah.
So,
What else did the FBI find? What else did the FBI find in their actual investigation of everything that went on, of the people themselves? And I guess they continue doing the investigation up until the very point, or even after they were deported. What are the actual findings?
They were there for. They were there for months, I think, right?
Okay, so this is so talking about the FBI, they were under FBI investigation for only 2 weeks. Okay, so after 2 weeks they were transferred. They were no longer in FBI custody because they were transferred to the Immigration and Naturalization Service and then deported. So the remainder of their time, apparently, according to because the FBI document shows all of the different forms where the FBI lead agents were transferring responsibility from one department of the bureau to the other, or one office to the next. There's actually a file, or there's actually a document where they transfer responsibility to immigration, and that's where I believe they were detained for the majority of their time there. So in the United States, it actually takes quite a bit of time to deport someone. In my opinion, they should have been deported much sooner. They were committing immigration offenses. There's no excuse. By the way, I don't think there's an excuse for most of their behavior. If you're looking in the legal sense, okay. Obviously, we've all been 21. We've all pissed off a porch, things like that. Not me specifically, but I've had friends who've done stupid things. But in the legal sense, no, they don't have an excuse for what they did, but it's not connecting them to 9/11. In fact, their reckless behavior, the fact that they had on them, this is what's interesting. So they had on them notebooks and contact, what used to be organizer books. This was before people put addresses and phone numbers in their cell phone. They had crazy amounts of that on them when they were arrested. Is that something an intelligence agent would do? Carry on them personal effects that would show who they had contact with back in their home country? I don't think so. I think it's pretty indicative that if these were, whatever they were doing, it wasn't in a professional capacity, except that they were, doing what they did
They were
while
just-
they were. Yeah.
There were young people who were there illegally, to work illegally. I had friends who did that, not in America. But they went to Europe to do that.
Right.
It should be mentioned that when they came back, they said that they were going to sue the United States government for the way they were treated. I don't think anything came out of that, but yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't find any follow-ups.
I don't think they would have won the case either. I think that they would have had to have shown some proof. But there's a number of different things that they, patterns of behavior where you can see that they were not trained to do whatever. First of all, in every interview. So hold on. Let me get through.
Why was it said? Yeah.
Let me get through this one point.
Yeah.
The fact that an intelligence agent agreed to speak to an FBI agent without an attorney present after being arrested, I think that's very hard to believe, because in the U.S., once you're in custody of any law enforcement officer, we have, first of all, you have to be read the Miranda rights. That's something that's basic. That you have a right to an attorney. So they would have been informed that they have the right to an attorney. So they could have said immediately when thrown into the cell, I want my lawyer. Obviously, the FBI can milk the time and wait till they get the lawyer. But if they're requesting the lawyer, they don't have to say a damn word to the FBI until then. None of them requested an attorney. That shows that if they had been trained, they were trained pretty poorly, because someone over wherever they came from, Israel, if they were Turkish, whatever country, who wanted to send a spy to the United States and wanted them to be prepared for that, they would have said, hey, in the United States, do you have the Miranda rights? It's basic knowledge for anyone who lives here.
Why was it said that one of them was okay, they said one of them was Mossad agent. I think they said actually that he was only in. This is new for me. I saw in the what's on the unit. It wasn't Mossad, but some
was
in
probably
the Israeli
Amman.
army something.
It was probably Shmonematayim or something.
Yes.
You know.
So this is something that they harp on a lot.
So it wasn't Mossad because the story is that he was Mossad. Yeah.
Right. So
there was one of them who was connected somehow. By the way, I'll just say there is something that people need to understand when it comes to the Mossad. A lot of Israelis that live abroad, every now and then, sometimes for very specific cases, especially Israelis that are very high profile, that can get into places, and God knows we have enough of those. They are contacted and they are requested to do certain things. And then they might be flagged as someone who has a connection too. So there's the story of the guy who actually fled. He's I think he's the owner of the movers of we call them a removals company here in Britain. I guess it's just movers in the States. So what's his story? Like, he ran away. Did he ever come forward after that in an interview or anything? Do we know anything about him? Is there anything incriminating? Is there anything that I'm not big on conspiracies. I as you know, I'm an atheist, and I call conspiracies religion's retarded brother. Yeah.
Okay. So let me answer regarding Dominic Suter. He's been identified as the owner of United Moving Systems. You asked if there's anything incriminating against him. There's plenty of stuff incriminating, but it has nothing to do with intelligence work. It has to do with the fact that employees of his came forward, probably because he was a bad boss, and they started revealing issues where he would cheat on his taxes. He had a lot of illegal immigrants working for him. He had a lot of basically domestic offenses that he would have landed in jail, at least for the tax offenses. It would have taken, he would have been thrown in the pokey for a long time for that. So, Dominic Suter, yes, he did do something incriminating according to people who worked for him. And therefore, when he fled the country, of course you could claim, well, he was fleeing because they were going to expose him as a Mossad operative. And that very well might be. But if you look at the actual witness testimony by him, the only thing that seems to connect him to some sort of diabolical plot was that one of his former employees claimed that he and the others would treat their non-Jewish employees worse than the Jewish ones, and that at a certain point, some of them had said something about how we're going to take over and America is finished and everything. So former employee testifying against his boss. Now, maybe what Dominic Suter said to him was true. Maybe, the conversation was true as he reported it. Now, but this is a former employee. We don't know anything about this person. One of the problems with the FBI document is that so much of it is redacted, meaning that you can't see either the identities of the people who are being interviewed, or a lot of the information that they're sharing. Some of the information is personal, such as addresses and places of business and things like that, which in American law, what does Ryan Dawson want? Does he want to be able to follow these people, go over to their jobs or businesses that they own and demand that they explain what they said to the FBI? The FBI is not required to reveal the information of witnesses to the public for a case that was never brought to trial. So I would like to know more. I don't think that we'll necessarily know the full details of what's redacted in the FBI file until some of these people might die, or maybe, it could be, I guess, compelled through different court litigation, which is not very likely. It's something that they believe that it's being covered up in order to protect Israel. But what are they going to do? Are they going to force the American government to reveal the names of people that were co-workers of of these guys that they don't even live in New York anymore? What will it gain them? Are they going to travel to Israel to find some of these people who themselves left the country in order to find out what they knew? A lot of the witness testimony is pretty ridiculous. It doesn't have anything to do with 9/11. It has to do with, for example, one woman reported that one of the gentlemen received a camera not long before 9/11. But what does that help you get? Some of the photos are redacted. Could that be more evidence of them documenting 9/11? Sure. But the easy answer, okay, what would you call it? The more innocent answer is that this was a camera that they were carrying around the city. Maybe they were taking photos of other people that they were hanging out with. There was a print recovered in the van that it showed basically an improvised bong that was created with a Nesquik bottle. So it's reasonable to assume that some of the photos on it had nothing to do with the events of 9/11. Some of them had to do with other things that the guys were doing. Will we ever know? I don't know. And obviously that keeps the myth alive. It keeps the legend alive of the dancing Israelis. And it's a question that I can't really answer.
Yeah, it keeps the myth alive, but the question is, when you look into this, is there any actual evidence? And after what I've heard from you, there's nothing. Nothing remains of that story. Story. Now it's people keeping it alive, and this is just this is, you have that with everything. The people will always find a way to somehow keep it alive. But I mean, all of the actual things that seemed incriminating, you've answered and you've debunked basically. I see, and there's nothing left. You talked about something else with Ryan Dawson about that they were driving to some place with the passport or whatever to let's say, I suppose, to throw the passport there or whatever.
Okay. Okay. So you want me to get into that?
Let me just ask another thing. Sure. Ryan Dawson kept saying that that's not what the case is based on. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's anything that he could and then he just he left he left the interview to take care of his children or whatever. Right. Do you think that there was something? Yeah. Do you think that the tricks?
Yeah, you can just afterwards just explain that remark, but finish Arad. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, is there anything anything else that he could have brought up to strengthen his case? Do you know were you prepared for something else that he would have brought up?
Look, I prepared pretty hard for the debate. Apparently, he claims that he didn't. He claims that he was hungover. He claims that he didn't know it was a debate. He thought it was an interview. He said he forgot about it. So, yeah, maybe he had a bad day. He wasn't really expecting someone to go into that degree of detail, which is why he didn't have the report in front of him. But yeah, there's I mean, certainly you could go to those witnesses that were more, I guess, judging of Dominic Suter and more towards him than towards the five Israelis, because the five members. But yeah, the fact is that there was a lot of stuff that I prepared for that we didn't get to, and would have probably made it significantly more of a bad day for him if we did. And one of them is the fact that he continuously refers to issues of this guy, Ali Jarrah, who was he was accused by Hezbollah and the Lebanese government of being an Israel spy, and I don't know if he's alive anymore. And he was a distant cousin, or he's a cousin in some effect of Ziad al-Jarrah, who was a 9/11 hijacker. But the fact is that the whole reliance on this idea that maybe Ziad al-Jarrah was a so is that something you want to go through, or is you want to stick strictly with the five Israelis?
No.
Because there's two. No. So the fact is, over his career, Ryan Dawson specifically, and along with other people, has made numerous claims that are leaps of logic in order to try to connect hijackers to the Mossad, other aspects of what happened to the Mossad, such as he's no longer a believer in the demolition theory. So I don't know when he stopped, but it's pretty funny sometimes how suddenly, without any real explanation, Ryan Dawson starts to disown certain things that he believed in the past. So during our debate, I actually did bring up the issue of Ziad al-Jarrah and his cousin Ali. The fact is that Ali Jarrah lived in a different part of Lebanon than Ziad al-Jarrah. They were both Ziad Jarrah was the only Lebanese citizen who was involved in the attack. The remainder were Egyptian or Saudi Arabian. And he was not known by anyone to have been a member of Al-Qaeda and his family, at least according to what they say. Now, Ryan Dawson tries to give this notion that, of course they knew, and of course his entire family knew, and therefore the entire family is guilty by association. And that's what Ryan Dawson does in many of his things, which is, I don't believe he's stupid. I don't believe he necessarily believes it all the time. But in America, we have a game called 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. If you've ever, the actor Kevin Bacon from, was he in?
Well, we are familiar with the game, yeah.
Yeah.
So you take one person and you take one association of his, and then you find a different node where they associate with someone else that's a person of interest, and you try to connect them as if that context explains what happened. But the fact is that Ali al-Jarrah is if he's still alive, he's 17 years older than his cousin Ziad. They both grew up secular, and no one has come forward claiming that they knew that Ali al-Jarrah was a Mossad agent prior to his arrest. So look, they can play this game all the time when they claim that Ali al-Jarrah, who was spying on Hezbollah, knew his cousin, who was an Al-Qaeda operative, was active in Al-Qaeda, while the rest of the family claims they didn't know. But it's not proof, it's not substantial, and this idea that your cousin's activities incriminate you is pretty ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's another area where I think that he is very dishonest. I don't think he's a libertarian anymore. I don't know if he claims to be, but I couldn't imagine people associating that thought with, the belief in the rights of the people. Your cousin has done something and you've done something else. You're both part of it. So
guilt by association.
Guilt by association, exactly. Yeah. But that's one of the things that now this is a guy who he likes to say, well, just because I go on David Duke's show doesn't mean that I subscribe to his views on race and everything. So look, if you don't want to be painted by guilt by association, you certainly shouldn't accuse someone just by the virtue of the fact that a cousin that you don't know when was the last time they had contact, that they were complicit in the same act as them. And furthermore, I was telling him in Lebanon, the average size of a family in 1970 when Ziad al-Jarrah was born was 5.4 people. Yeah. So this was a cousin. So he was potentially one of 36 different cousins of Ali al-Jarrah. And he expects Ali al-Jarrah to know everything that he's doing. And what Ryan said was that, yeah, I have 30 cousins. I know exactly what they're doing. He lives in Japan. Does he really expect me to believe? Never mind his audience. His audience, they're even more zany than him. But does he expect me to believe that he keeps track of his family members in North Carolina to the degree that he would know how all of them are doing? It's pretty doubtful given the day that he goes through. Well, a lot of the times he's streaming for 3 hours. I don't know when he has time to keep track of all these cousins and their kids' soccer practice and their art project and all that.
Yeah. Also, I'm not sure if they mean cousin or cousin as in the Arab cousin, because Arabs, when you talk about the Khamula, a cousin can be, like third, fourth degree cousin, someone who you never heard of, But they're part of the Khamula, so it's also hard to tell if it's an
So,
actual proper cousin or not.
yeah, so is the theory is just that because the cousin was supposedly a Mossad agent, that this guy is also a Mossad agent? That's
Yes,
all
the theory is that because Ali al-Jarrah was he was an agent in their home village in Marj. I think it's Marj al Ayoun, which it's pretty close to the Lebanese-Israeli border. Because he was later revealed to be or accused of being a Mossad agent, or not. We don't even know if it was a Mossad. It could have been the military intelligence. But the theory is that because he was his cousin, who was a member of Al-Qaeda, must have been either known to be in Al-Qaeda by his cousin, who lived in a different village. And meanwhile, remember, Ziad al-Jarrah doesn't even live in Lebanon for much of the time that he was apparently getting in the thick of it with Al-Qaeda. So somehow his cousin, who doesn't move away from the home village of Marj, he's supposed to keep track of his cousin who's globetrotting around the world, buying plane tickets everywhere. He's dressing up in Western suits, going to, he goes to flight school and everything. Somehow his cousin, who's 17 years older than him, somehow he's supposed to keep track of that. I need more proof.
No,
I mean, I can't just take the fact.
Yeah,
that
no, okay, no, this is all nonsense. The only thing with substance is the story that those 5 Israelis came there beforehand and set up cameras and then were celebrating when and this is the only incriminating, and you basically debunked that. So
no, there was another bit which you debunked.
There's nothing.
Which
the rest of it is just nonsense.
There was I don't know. No. So there was something which was really interesting, and I really liked how you handled it, and I really liked Ryan's response to it, because it was one of those rare cases where you actually see Ryan shutting up, right? Now, first of all, I'll just say, okay, so Ryan has a well-known, well-established tactic. You just name drop your way out of everything. You throw at your opponent or whoever, you dump on them enormous amounts of data that just the human brain can't really sift through. But once you get enough of it, it's sort of almost it overloads your brain into thinking, okay, evidence. And there's no scrutiny. And the bit I liked the best was, I forgot where was it. So he was talking about, you'll have to, I'm gonna butcher this. So they had a house which was next to the hijackers, but it actually wasn't, and then they moved somewhere. What was that story about? That was
that's
whole
something
mess.
So I go over it. So I've written 3, so let me show my screen. Okay, I've written 3 blog posts. This is my personal blog, so you don't have to worry unless Blogger gets all retarded, but you don't have to worry about it being unpublished for now. But so I've created 3 different responses just to that debate, because we couldn't get through everything.
Can you just expand it to the whole screen?
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah.
So the premise of what he's talking about is that the 5 guys were not just documenting 9/11, they were also surveilling the hijackers prior to 9/11, and the basis for that was the fact that Yaron Shemuel, who was one of the gentlemen who was seen on the video, that excuse me, that he had moved to New York area from Florida at some point prior to 9/11, but and then Ryan actually says in a video with his collaborator Adam Green, who himself is quite the, I mean, you think Ryan Dawson is needs a little bit of the a little bit of Narcan. You should watch Adam Green, because that's crazy country. But I have the video linked in this article where he says that they were living next door to the hijackers and that they were tracking one of the muscle hijackers, Abdulaziz Al-Mari, on 9/11. Al-Mari lived in this part of Florida called Vero Beach. It's very famous because the Dodgers practice there in the spring. But that's not next door to where Shemuel lived, because according to the only sources I could find, he lived in Miami Beach. And Miami Beach is, I actually have 151 miles away from Vero Beach. Vero Beach isn't even in the same county. It's 2 or 3 counties away from where this guy lived. So what could they say? They could say, oh, we were saying, as an allegory, they live next door. No. The entire theory rests on this idea that they were living literally next door to Ryan Dawson. And then in order to just dot my I's and cross my T's, I've listed every single city of residence for all of the hijackers prior to 9/11, and none of them lived in Miami Beach, which is where Yaron Shemuel lived. And the closest tie between any Israeli accused of being involved in 9/11 lived was a certain person named Uzi Boadana, who there's actually no evidence that he lived anywhere close to any of these people. But this has to do more with the art student theory, which is another completely, exaggerated aspect. These were you remember those people who they sell paintings door to door? They're usually after Israeli military service. So there was a whole ring of these students who were basically caught in March 2001. They were all caught and deported. When does Mohammed Atta move into his flat in Hollywood, Florida, which isn't even that's the city where allegedly the Israelis still were surveilling Mohammed Atta. They moved there in May, so that was a couple months later. So if they were being surveilled, they weren't even surveilled by these guys who were called the art students. But that's not even Yaron Shemuel. And the fact is that Abdulaziz Al-Umari, this is how the whole conversation started. He moved from New Jersey to Florida. Okay, let me see where is his name. So you can see the track I highlighted in blue. His first residence was a motel in Woodside, New York. That's on Long Island. The next one is in Elmwood Park, New Jersey, Wayne, New Jersey, South Hackensack, New Jersey, and then Newton, Massachusetts. And then only then does he go to Vero Beach, Florida. So he moved from New Jersey area to Florida. What about Yaron Shemuel? He moved the opposite direction. He moved from Florida to Brooklyn. He didn't even move to New Jersey. So supposedly he was surveilling him by switching places with him to different states. That's Ryan Dawson's theory.
Well, it's interesting, counterintuitive.
That's a very novel way of surveilling someone. That's pretty creative.
Okay.
And then so then in the next portion, which I called, I was actually, where is this?
Sorry.
Okay, so after the debate, I did the Ryan Dawson. Okay, so after the debate, he never really replied to it for a couple months. Basically, he ghosted the rest of us. He ghosted even Halsey English and J.F. Garapi, who were the two moderators. He never responded to any invitations for the debate. I got into an argument with him, and then a few months later, he actually released this video. Let me share the screen again.
If it's a video, you can just send me a link, and I'll put it on my end.
I mean, I don't know if you want to go through the whole video, but I can certainly send that to you.
How long is it?
It's actually like 15 minutes, but we could. I mean, I would recommend we do it a different time.
Yeah.
Obviously it took a while for us to get in touch this time, but in any case, so Ryan issued a video in response to the debate, and he actually admitted that he had gotten it mixed up. But he doesn't apologize to Yaron Shemuel, he's been accusing for over a decade of being this Mossad agent or something, of accusing. So this is the real problem, that he to spread things that are blatantly untrue. They can't be proven. They contradict the facts. And then when you call him out on that, he doesn't think his credibility has been affected at all, because he always says that the bigger picture remains the same, that the details don't matter. That's why he wouldn't cite any of the things that he was claiming that being from the report. And in this response video, he actually makes another claim that shows just how dishonest he is, where when he actually said that because the FBI sent surveillance camera footage to Quantico, that they were interested in what the CIA had to say about the suspects. Well, this guy who supposedly is an expert on American intelligence community, he seems to think that the CIA is in Quantico. Quantico is the FBI. It actually says on the documents that it was to the FBI crime lab, right? So most people who, anyone who picks up a Tom Clancy novel, which I don't read, anybody who picks up any sort of any information about the CIA's actual headquarters knows that it's in Langley, Virginia, not in Quantico. They're quite a distance away. I have it on the map here. If you see it, you actually have to leave this. I think this is Fairfax County, so you have to. Quantico is actually further down the Potomac, and Ryan should know that because he's a native of North Carolina and probably commuted to DC in his life. They're not that far away.
By the way, you can stop your sharing. I'm showing the map here on my screen, so you don't have to share it on your end. I opened the link here, so.
Okay. So anyway, yes, there's quite a bit of these are always, what he has to do is always create some sort of logical leap in order to make any of his theories make any sense. And yeah, this is why I did the graphic at the top is him as Ali G talking to an FBI officer, and it's just the guy claims to be an expert on the intelligence community. He claims to be an expert on. He claims to have anonymous sources that report only to him. I have my sources. I don't need to explain anything, and that's why forget 9/11. A couple weeks ago, there was the assassination of General Soleimani, right?
Yeah.
And then there was the shooting down of the Ukrainian flight. That there was conjecture for the first couple of days. How did it happen? Was it really Iran or not? And Ryan was trying to claim for the first couple of days, I am not going to form an opinion until I see any evidence that Iran shot it down, and he even published an interview that was not aired on Press TV, that he was trying to doubt what had happened and all of these conjectures and everything, and a couple of days later, what happened? Iran admitted that it had shot down the Ukrainian Airlines flight. Now I get it; he's on the Iran side of the conflict. He doesn't live here in the U.S. anymore. He doesn't owe anyone his allegiance in terms of which countries he thinks are better or not. But he published that interview days after Iran had admitted it, which does it improve his credibility when he's basically posting an interview that didn't air because Press TV didn't want to air it, possibly because they didn't want to publish something that would make them look like idiots? I don't think so. I think the guy just he's full of himself. His ego is uncontrollable, and that gets in the way of his better judgment.
Yeah. Well, listen. In that respect, he's basically in a sort of a Chomskyan camp, right? And it's this weird. Yeah, they're basically libertarians, but it's not our type, quote unquote, of libertarians. It's a different family. And it's one where, okay, so Chomsky specifically is a socialist, but that's a different story. It's essentially one that comes from the I know I'm mixing now simcha b'simcha, as they say, but it's this worldview that you can also see very prevalent in the in the regressive quote unquote left, the SJWs and all that. Well, you pick a side which you think are the poor and the oppressed, and that's it. And now they are saints. So the weak are saints, the oppressed are saints, the poor are saints. And once you pick a side, which is, okay, they are the oppressed, the poor, I don't know, the noble, savage, brown man, or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? You pick your team, that's it. They can do no wrong from that point on. Add to that what is obviously an obvious, apparent hatred of Jews. I mean, I don't know if he's still hiding it, if he's still saying no, I'm not. But
well, so that was something I didn't want to, like, the debate. So there's the issue of calling people anti-Semites on YouTube is now, it doesn't, by calling someone an anti-Semite, people think that you're basically trying to character assassinate someone without addressing their points. So when I did the debate with him, I tried to make it as much about 9/11 and more specifically about the 5 movers and not about his record with Jews. But I mean, there's a tweet I have of him. Let me find it here. Okay, this was from 2018. He says, Jewish success is because of nepotism and people already in power converting to Judaism so they could continue the practice of usury. Being a parasite requires a host. That has nothing to do with Zionism or Israel. There's so many different angles where Ryan basically he uses information that it's pretty clear he does not actually look for ways to explain what went on. It's more about him trying to.
No, look again. When I return to that, when I look into all these conspiracy theories, it's always I always look for the things that are substantial, and not all the circumstantial nonsense around it. And like I said, the substantial stuff was the fact that the Israelis were there and were seen to be celebrating, and so that's kind of suspicious. Then the question is, were they there beforehand, which would make it more suspicious? And you said, and you basically said that there's no evidence for that. So that's
okay. So let me bring up something about that. This is important. Yeah. In his response video, this is something I forgot to mention. He brings up this one part of the FBI file where he alleges that the hijackers, let me get my ducks in a row here. So he alleges that there is actual footage or 1 second, I need to find this. Yeah, so at another point, he looks at a different portion of the report, part 6, page 94. This is on, so he concludes that because the van had left the warehouse at 8:55, it could reach the Doric by 9 a.m. He is behaving as if this is the FBI's version of the timeline, rather than a restatement of one of the suspects' version of events to the police. So he's deliberately taking out of context the quote, which is what the witness says. It's not what the police or the FBI say. Then he says, and when reading the passage that he's talking about, it doesn't show that the suspect was saying that they arrived at the Doric at 9 a.m. It says they returned to the warehouse by that time. So this was when they returned to Weehawken. So that I would say actually conflicts with his version of it, because what time does the second plane hit the World Trade Center? It hits it at I believe 9:02 a.m. So they decided, we're going to pack up and go back to the warehouse before the second plane goes down there. Well, then they weren't documenting the event. Okay, so if he believes that, then and their timeline of events, either he has to claim that the witness had the times mixed up, or he has to admit that they weren't really documenting the event. Then it says in my Post. It said, what Dawson should have been saying is that the suspect either lied or was mistaken, because otherwise his timeline really doesn't make any sense. The text reads that this person and the second person were in the parking lot for approximately 10 minutes between 8:30 and 9 a.m., but returned to Urban Moving Systems before 9. Dawson is misreading the suspect's statement that he returned to work before 9, as instead saying that he left UMS and arrived at the Dork Towers by 9. This only causes more confusion. There was another aspect of that, which I thought I included in here, is that the video, he claims that it was of the suspects and that it was taken at the Dork Towers. If you look at the actual place in the FBI file, it says clearly that it was taken at a gas station around 8:30. So what he was basically saying was that he doesn't know how to read an entire page of this report. The vehicle that the surveillance video that was being analyzed had to do with a gas station that had been subpoenaed, and they gave their surveillance video over, and there was some van footage, and they couldn't read the actual license plate on the van. But it said, so Dawson also, here we go. So this is, you see the section where it says FBI RI, right above the one that I just read. So look at the third bullet point. It says Dawson also muses as to why the film segment in question was focusing on the time between 8:29 a.m. and 8:31 to find a license plate. He wonders whether it was from satellite or surveillance footage. It actually says on the page that it was surveillance footage. And why the focus was on a time 16 minutes before the striking of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. If you would just look at the previous paragraph on that page, you would see that this was for an Exxon gas station. And I linked the page right there. There's something he never does. He shows screenshots. He never shows links in his documents, and anything he does, he never shows links to the actual FBI file, which is something that I do every time. So, yeah, this was footage taken at an Exxon gas station between 8:29 and 8:31. If he believes that these were the people, then their alibi is true, and they did stop at a gas station before proceeding to work on 9/11, which would contradict every single different version that Ryan has said. So according to this, he either believes that they left the Dork Tower prior to the second airplane hitting I think it hit the South Tower, okay, which would have been even harder to get into focus from where they were at the Dork Towers, because you could pretty much see the North Tower from New Jersey. You can't necessarily see the South Tower. And the second issue is that he's bringing up surveillance footage that he lies and says was from the Dork Towers. It was really from a gas station. And if they were really at the gas station at the time, then those two witnesses that said that they were there at 8 o'clock or 8:15, that the van was there, they don't say that the guys were there, then they were obviously seeing a different van, because why would they go to the Dork Tower and then decide, oh, we're going to go get some gas and then come back?
You did a lot of work here. I mean, how long does it take you to even do the basic research here?
I'll tell you the truth. So a lot of the stuff that I found out, I had somebody who's been a follower of Ryan's for a while, follower of his videos at least. He was feeding me like good videos and instances to pick from. And my case originally was very different. It had to do more with the lines of sight and the timeline for how they traveled to the Dork apartment buildings. And then gradually, as I started to both read the FBI file and watch some of Dawson's videos, I started to realize that he's deliberately either lying about what's in the file, or he's just reading from other people who have used this. He's recycling what other people have said, and he does it pretty frequently. And then he never apologizes when he abandons one part of it in order to, basically go from one floating piece of wood in the ocean to another. That's the way that he operates, and I think that it's pretty, like, some people would say, well, you're wasting your time. And I did spend about a week and a half doing this back in September, just collecting a lot of the facts, and it was a pretty grinding situation. Luckily, I had the time during this period, and I put it all together. but there's so many different instances that you could use. But some people would ask why really put the effort into it. I think that this is becoming more and more important simply because of the passage of time.
Inside my future eye, what I see just makes me cry.